I was asked to introduce Ellie, Seif, and Carolyn Johnson, and it's my honor to do so. I will be brief because I'm sure there is much that they have to say about this exhibit, and we want to leave ample time for questions at the end. In addition, Carolyn and Ellie have posted their biographies at the beginning of the exhibit. So suffice it to say that the two of them have been good friends for over 40 years, starting as young mothers and continuing through their individual careers. Ellie is teacher and principal of an elementary high school, and Carolyn as the founder of the National Adoption Center. Their friendship has continued on into retirement and beyond, at which point they focused on photography, working individually and collaboratively, each going on to win awards for her work. So let me turn the floor over to Ellie and Carolyn.
No, Carolyn's going to start.
Oh, okay. Ellie and I were inspired by a book that we had heard about called Code of the Street by Elijah Anderson. And at the time, he was professor of social sciences at the University of Pennsylvania. He is now professor of sociology and African American studies at Yale University. Professor Anderson took a walk down Germantown Avenue, and he wrote about how the codes that people use changed as he went down the street. I'd like to read you from the beginning of his book. And by the way, for those of you who are not from Philadelphia, Germantown Avenue is a major thoroughfare, and we live very close to it. Germantown Avenue is a major Philadelphia artery that dates back to colonial days, 8.5 miles long and running mostly southeast. It links the northwest suburbs with the heart of inner city Philadelphia. It traverses a varied social terrain as well. Germantown Avenue provides an excellent cross-section of the social ecology of an American city. Along this artery live the well-to-do, the middle-income classes, the working poor, and the very poor, the diverse segments of urban society. The story of Germantown Avenue can therefore serve in many aspects as a metaphor for the whole city. Ellie?
Well, many of you have seen this exhibit, but many of you may not have seen the exhibit. It's up at Cathedral Village, and it extends for about 33 images. So what we would like to do today is to share the experience, but give you more information about the photographs and about our very deep engagement with so many of the people. For more than 45 years, Carolyn and I have lived in close proximity to Germantown Avenue. And just so that you know, our children went to nursery school together, and that was a long time ago. So she's in the one side of Germantown Avenue and I'm on another side. This exhibit was originally done in 2013. And surprisingly, neither of us had ever traveled the length of the avenue, which is 8.5 miles. The avenue illustrates the daily lives of many different kinds of communities across our city. And we thought about the different lifestyles and how it changed from one place to the next place to the next place, our project was born. Now, in terms of street photography, Carolyn and I do photography together, and one of our important features is street photography. We love to talk to people, to engage with people in the street. And so we go out a lot in the city and take photographs. So we became interested in photographing the people along the avenue. We did not want the architecture. We did not want the landmarks. We wanted the people. We wanted to know who lived, who worked, who hung out on the avenue, and we explored it from one end to the other. We allowed ourselves to be led by what we saw and what we felt. And then what we did was we opened ourselves up to the environment, and I think we became pretty vulnerable and streetwise as we did this. We introduced ourselves to people over the course of many months. Maybe it was even a year, I'm not sure how long. And we shared our project with them, and you'll hear more about that with each picture that we share. So our cameras gave us entree into their space and allowed us to engage with them. And the response, it was really amazing. The response from almost everybody was positive, and they just seemed to allow us into their lives. So we learned about we learned about them, and in doing so, we learned about ourselves too. And I think we were just privileged to hear people's stories, capture their images, and really reveal their humanity, their individuality. So I think now what we'll do is share the screen and begin our, so that you can see the photographs. And as was said before, we will have questions at the end. And also, one other thing, we won't be talking about every image. Well, there are certain ones that we want to engage you with. So I guess we will share our screen now.
So we'll tell you a little bit more about Fred and Christopher and Greg later on, but this was probably the most touching moment that we had. And here we are. I didn't have white hair then. How about that, Ellie?
Yeah.
I later
Sure.
followed Ellie with the white hair. But here we are hanging out on the avenue, and I even got to sit on a milk crate, which for some reason I had always wanted to do. This is a rough map of Germantown Avenue. It starts up at the top, coming into the city at in Chestnut Hill, right by Chestnut Hill College. And as you can follow it all the way down, the mystery to us was, where does Germantown Avenue end? And we'll give you a little story as we get to the end of it. As we went, we asked people, where does Germantown Avenue end? And I don't think anybody knew for sure. And as we got towards the end, we asked people, where does Germantown Avenue begin? And one man said very definitely, in Sharon Hill. I know that's where it starts. So.
Okay, so this is the first picture that was taken, and this is the top of Chestnut Hill, and it is really an area that has so much going on. But this is an early morning. There's a bus. There are two train stations that go into Center City. You can see a newsstand that was very, 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 very popular, and it closed recently within COVID. But it's just a very dynamic corner. Actually, there's a lot of shops, a lot of stores, and the two trains and the bus, and it just sort of starts the avenue in Chestnut Hill. And just across the street from that, for those of you who know Chestnut Hill, who have lived here, you would know Russell, who is the owner of Killian's. And this store had everything anybody would ever want. If your house was 50 years old and it was a screw that went in to keep something together, Russell would find you that screw, and it cost you 10 cents. Well, it was a family-owned business for 100 years, and this was the 100th year anniversary of Killian's and of the hardware store, and he posed. And then this was on the street of the 100th anniversary, and this woman's name is Pat, and she is a bastion in Chestnut Hill. And if any of you again know and have seen her, she plays the piano, a keyboard, right outside of Killian's quite often. I don't know if I haven't seen her recently, but she and Russell from Killian's were very much part of what happens at the top of the hill at Germantown Avenue in Chestnut Hill. This is in front of the co-op.
This pretty lady was on her way to a church meeting across the street from the trolley car diner and ice cream place. I stopped and talked to her for a few minutes, and she told me what she was there for. And then her friends were yelling at her, come on, we're going to be late. And she said, yoo-hoo, I'll be there when I get there. And I just enjoyed her so much and enjoyed the outfit.
And you may know again about the trolley car diner, which everyone visited for so long, and it was again a major part of the community, and that has recently closed. Whoops. Oh, okay. I don't know whether you recognize Dan Cuellar. He is a reporter on NBC. He doesn't look like that now, it was a number of years ago. But the thing about this particular slide was, again, it was at the trolley car diner. And in Mt Airy, there's always a lot of protesting and people stand up for what they believe is the important things. And there was a strike in Philadelphia, and the teachers were on strike and the kids were protesting, and the reporter was called. I need my teachers. I am the face of the public schools. Shame on you, governor. And so these kids were really protesting. But the thing, as I'm going back and looking at it now, what's so striking is that can be happening right now with what's going on in schools. I need my teachers. I am the face of the public schools, the future. Our kids rely on you. It's just so crucial. So this was, since 2012 probably, and here we are 10 years later, and the same issue for different reasons is going on. For me, this was the most emotional and dynamic photograph. The gym this is in Mt Airy, the gym is up the street, and I would go to the gym, and then I would walk home from there. And these gentlemen were always sitting by the Wawa. This is right by the Wawa. And I got to know them. I started chatting with them probably over a couple of years. And we just really had a nice relationship. Greg, Hat, and Bill. Hat is the one with the big hat. And I took a picture. And then I went and I made a 4x6 copy of each of the photograph. And I gave each one a copy just to have it of the three of them. They were very, very, very close friends. Well, one day, Hat wasn't there. And they told me that Hat had been very sick, but he hadn't told anybody, and he passed away. And then Bill, the one on the left, took out the 4x6 photograph that I had given them. And he said, this photograph was in the funeral pamphlet for Hat that happened just this past week. And so I was so touched. And he actually, I think I have it at home. I still have the funeral pamphlet with the picture of the three of them. And then not too long after, Bill became ill. And Bill and Greg were there, and I chatted with them, and Bill became iller and iller, and Bill died. And I spent a little time with Greg, and then I don't know what happened. I didn't see him again. But I really felt over several years, I developed this relationship with these three men. I know one was a postal worker and one was a teacher, and I don't know about Bill. But it was quite an experience I had with the three of them. This is in Mt Airy also, right outside the gym. And this was a member of the graduating class of the Germantown High School. And this young man was celebrating with his family. And I talked to him and asked him what he was going to do. And he said he was looking forward to studying dance. So I said, well, would you like to dance for me? And that's what he did. So that was his dance, and we had a lovely conversation, and that was it. This was Germantown. This was another one that was pretty dynamic for me. This is a memorial to 288 Philadelphians who were killed by guns in 2012. And there was a little boy, he was standing there pointing to the letters, and his dad was over to the side, And I started to talk to them, and I said, what was going on? And he said that he was practicing his letters. So I said, could I take a picture of him as he's doing that? And the father said, sure. And so we started going through all the letters. And as I just really thought of this now, I mean, in the last week, going through this, here is this memorial to people who were killed, such a sad, sad thing going on. And here's this little boy learning his letters at probably 4 or 5 years old. And it was very, very touching to me, and more touching as I go back after all these years. I guess I do a lot of the beginning photos, and Carolyn does a lot of the old photos. Well, this is one of 2 photographs that does not have people in it. And as we said, people were in all of the images. Well, we got to talking to 2 gentlemen, 2 Muslim gentlemen who were part of the mosque here. And they were talking to us, and we said we'd like to take a picture of them, and told them what we were doing. And he said, well, we don't allow pictures taken. So we'll go inside, and you can take a picture of the mosque outside, and then afterward we'll take you into our little store right next to the mosque and talk to you a little bit about our religion. And so this is what the photograph I took. And then we walked into their store, and they started telling us, you know, a bit about their religion, about Muhammad, and we spend time with them there in this small center. We're not sure, Carolyn and I are not sure that we kind of remember or understand all the reasons that pictures cannot be taken, and we'll give you a different understanding later on at a different mosque. So that's that one. Oh, by the way, that's Germantown.
Keep them on long enough so people can read them.
Oh, yeah.
So we were going down the avenue, and I said, stop. We got out, parked, and I said, I have to know who this memorial is for. And there was a small church next door, and I talked to the pastor, and he said, I really don't want to talk about this. So we went to some homes in the area and stopped some people on the street, and nobody seemed to want to talk about it. Finally, I saw a grandmother with her taking care of her grandchildren, and she said, my husband knows what happened, and I'll have him come out. So the story was that Lee, a young man of 37, had grown up right across the street from this corner. This is in Nicetown. And there was a shootout. He may have been killed by the police. We are not sure. But the man who was telling us said, the neighborhood is better without him.
I think this was one of the first times that I felt uncomfortable on this street, and Carolyn seemed, I think, more comfortable than I was.
So we're back to our friends Greg and Fred and little Christopher. And we were in Nicetown and just past Broad and Erie, I believe. And we spent a lot of time with these men. First of all, they were very concerned about our safety. And they said, as long as you're right here in this block, we'll have your back. And we chit-chatted and asked him, you know, the standard questions. Did they know where the avenue began? Where did it end? And then I got into a side conversation with Fred, who was the man who's seated. And he told me that he had been in and out of jail most of his life. and that not too long ago, he had gotten out of jail, gone to the closest church, and just got down on his knees and said, Lord, I'm not leaving until I'm a different person. And he prayed, he cried, he stayed there for hours. And finally, he felt a sense of peace come over him. He said he was touched by the Lord. He had lost all of his family because of his criminal activities, and decided he would start one person at a time to make his amends. And the first was with his daughter, who was a nurse, and the mother of Christopher. So Fred was working at the time, but on his day off, he and his childhood friend, Greg, would take care of Christopher. And just as we were ready to leave, I said, Fred, would you pray for my son, who was very ill at the time? And he said, well, not, yeah, but sit right down. He said, Greg, get off the crate. Carolyn has to sit on the crate. And he took my hand, and we just sat there in Germantown Avenue. He prayed. He was so eloquent. I was so touched. And bless you, Fred. I hope things are good for you.
This, I think, for both of us, Carolyn for this one, and me also, and also the Wawa with the three men, I think were the two most striking experiences that we had.
Not too far from Fred and Greg, this little
Tioga,
boy.
by the way. Tioga.
Oh, we're in Tioga now. And this little boy came by. He had just left the dollar store, and his mom had given him money, and he picked out a new cement mixer. My husband calls this the little Mike Tyson. But he first showed me a cement mixer, and then he showed me his dollar that he had left over. And Ellie and I are both, our careers were devoted to children. And so we always perked up when we saw a little boy. He was very shy, though. Now, we're in North Philly, and the Mural Arts Society sponsored two Dutch artists to come over. Their names are Haas and Han, and they are best known for painting favelas in Rio de Janeiro. And so they were commissioned by the Mural Arts Society, and they spent a lot of time in this 3 or 4 block area on the avenue, talking to each store owner and finding out what colors they would like to have their building painted. And then they had to kind of like pull the whole thing together. I mean, it was really beautiful. If you ever get a chance to drive down there, it's just knocks your eyes out. But what I was taken by in this photo was, first of all, you notice the 23 bus is going to Chestnut Hill. But it was the woman in her color coordinated outfit that coral just matched the coral of the building perfectly.
Well, this street is just next door to the street that Carolyn just showed you, and you can really see the difference. Although this is in black and white, the whole feeling felt totally different. This man was very unhappy. I think you can see he's covering his face. There's a sign with no job opening, sorry. You have a sense of the street not being in the same system really as the other one. And the difference between the two, yet they were so close together, was really striking to me. And there was really a grim feeling of this scene, while the other one had the color and the enthusiasm. And so that mixture of two streets that were so close to each other was striking to the two of us.
We returned to this area and many other areas over and over and over again. And we went back one early evening. It was very, very hot. And we met this mom who said she was originally from Thailand with her two beautiful daughters. And the mom had taken them to the avenue so they could get something cold to drink and some treats. And while it was a very sweet scene, it made me so angry and so sad. They are sitting on a pallet, and there are rusty nails sticking out of this pallet because there are no benches. There are no welcoming benches along this strip, despite, the color in the buildings, because this is right where it was painted. And I hope it has improved since then. Also in this area, there is
This is North Philadelphia.
in North Philly, there is the Village of Arts and Humanities, and they have a small park right off the avenue. And we were there Friday, about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and two Muslim women were going very fast across this park. And the one woman was all in black, and she said, don't take a picture, no photos, and turned her back. And the other woman said, take my picture. So she got up on a stage that's in the park, and she went, ta-da! And I didn't catch her name, but I always think of her as the ta-da woman. She was delightful.
I don't know why it's,
Try here.
okay, try that. Okay.
And also in this same area, again, on a pretty warm night, I talked to this lady who lived in the community and had a garden, and she tried to keep the street clean, and she was just delightful. I initially said, how are you? And she said, oh, Arthur has the best of me today. And it's the first time I ever knew that Arthur was the nickname for arthritis. When we went back, maybe a month or so later, I asked about her, and she had really become immobile and had to sell her home and move in with a niece who cared for her.
That's
Slow. Go back.
Yeah, okay, I should go back.
Just to give you time to read. This was a Spanish-speaking church on Sunday morning. And now we're almost at Gerard Avenue. And at a very, very large mosque, very different from the other one. We spoke to the imam and told him what we were doing, asked if we could. He came out and talked with us. We asked him about photos, and he said, sure, but ask people unless you're at a distance. But if you're doing close up, just ask them, they'll say. He invited us to come in for prayers, which were held at 1 o'clock on Friday. He said, but don't be late. If you're coming, you'll never be able to park. We decided not to go in, but to drive by, and they have a city block for their parking lot. And it was a sea of yellow taxis. This because of the taxi drivers, but also drivers bringing people to prayer. They can hold 1,000 people for prayer at any one time, and it is very international, and they've worked very hard on all the different ethnicities of people to get along and so on. It's quite a remarkable mosque.
Yes, we're actually now in Northern Liberties, Fishtown. Now, this is an odd picture that I would think you wouldn't be expecting to see along Germantown Avenue. It's almost at the end, and we were walking down around the end of the avenue, and we saw a sign, and it said North Shore Beach Club, which did seem to be odd in the middle of the city along Germantown Avenue. And we approached the gentleman at the door, and he said, yes, this is a beach club. And we said we don't belong, of course, but we explained the project and wondered whether we could take pictures. And he said, sure, come on in. And this is what we saw, which just was shocking, given the whole length of the avenue in the middle of the city, to see this. And everybody was friendly. Nobody seemed to mind us taking pictures, and these two young girls posed for us. We were recently down here because we wanted to photograph at the end of the avenue one more time. And we stopped along to see the North Shore Beach Club. The sign was there, but it was locked and it was closed. So it no longer exists. And again, this is right where Germantown, just about a block from where Germantown Avenue ends at I-95. And this picture was taken a few weeks ago. Carolyn will tell you more, but this gentleman has been working on what's going on at the end of Germantown Avenue now.
So we were shocked. First of all, when we drove the avenue, we crossed Girard Avenue and we kept going a few blocks right to this spot. That has now been cut off. You can't drive there because there is so much construction going on. If you turn 360 degrees, you can see high rises all over the place. This is a very much a young people's area, and there are restaurants and all kinds of, there's just a beat to this area now, which is, some people call it Northern Liberties, some people call it Fishtown, but it certainly is an area of growth for our city. And just to conclude, we just loved our journey. We love talking with people. Our cameras, as Ellie said, gave us entree, plus our hair, and being senior citizens. Nobody was afraid of us. And it was a wonderful journey, and we're happy to take your questions.
And now that actually some of you who have seen the exhibit now maybe can, look again and see it with a different perspective.
Can I just say that press your space bar to talk, then you won't have to mute and unmute. Just hold on that space bar, you'll be able to talk.
Oh,
that's for everybody. Yes, for everybody.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts, any comments?
I think you did great.
Can I make? I don't know who's talking.
Me. I
Okay.
just want to say this is amazing. You did a great job, and the two of you are fearless.
You muted yourself.
And what I wanted to say, it was a beautifully done job. You're very talented. I'm sure you didn't do it with your cell phones. You probably have some nice equipment.
Oh, this now.
Was there a pool at the beach club or just places to lie out and sun oneself?
There was a big pool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carolyn, can I talk?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's amazing to see here were two white women, older white women, who were apparently quite comfortable walking around in a basically black-brown neighborhood. I know you've lived there many years. Is there something unique about the two of you that allowed you to do that? And I'm wondering, I can't tell how I would have, first of all, I don't like street photography because I'm not as comfortable as you two are talking to people who I don't know and taking pictures of them. I'm comfortable driving. I live in Michigan. I used to live, I was friends with them when we were all in our middle 30s. I lived near them. Anyway, I'm comfortable driving into Detroit in a Black neighborhood because my husband was Black, and I knew the neighborhood. I'm not afraid in the same way. And I wondered if that's what helps you to be unafraid because you live there, you live near it there or whatever. Oh, can you talk a little bit about that?
It's a really good question, and I'm not too sure exactly what the answer is, except we just started going out and speaking to people. And as we did, I think for me, I can just speak for me, because people were so willing to talk and accepting of us, it just gave us more and more credibility and less fear and less concern in doing it over and over. But the one photograph that I had trouble with was with that killing had happened, and Carolyn went and actually knocked on doors. And I was uncomfortable doing it. I kind of went along with her. But other than that, we were very comfortable, but we have recently said that we don't think we would do it now.
Why? What's different?
It's a different
Well,
time with all.
Oh, it's a different time.
Rate has gone from 288 to way over 500 is one reason. But I think we were younger then. I think we feel a little more vulnerable.
Right.
But I think the thing was everybody that we saw and I mean, they're just people. There was no, we weren't afraid.
Can you speak up, Carolyn?
Yeah, I just wasn't ever afraid.
Okay.
And, you know, I have a Black family also, so I don't know that helps, but
Yeah.
Nancy?
What
Nancy, and then-
what I saw and heard, that you were relating to people as people, and that you were seeing these people, young, old, friends, not friends, lovers, as people. The color of the skin, certainly the surroundings were remarkable in terms of the juxtaposition of a comfortable street and then a very poor street. But what I got from when you were talking and from your photos, you were looking at people. And I think when you see people as people, a lot of those fears and a lot of those, okay, I got to keep my distance. You were very polite. You asked permission, but I was very touched by that and your people to people skills. And I think that's what made those pictures very special. Thank you.
You. Let's see. Is anybody else if you want to?
Yeah, somebody had their hand up.
I'll call on myself. It's Eileen. I wanted to explain something about Arthur, the woman who said Arthur is visiting her. As a physical therapist in the early 70s, I worked in a pretty rough neighborhood in Brooklyn, predominantly Black. And all of my Black patients would refer to their arthritis as arthritis. And they had osteoarthritis. So sometimes your fingers hurt, or the shoulder hurts, or this knee hurts. So they commonly refer to it as galloping arthritis.
oh,
So that's where Arthur is visiting me comes from. And you also brought memory back to me when you said the gentleman who told you, if you stay on this block, I'll look out for you. One of the things that I noticed, because I also did home care, is I had a regular schedule. And as soon as I would show up, the only white person in this neighborhood and a woman alone, I always ended up having a guardian. In one apartment building, the super would be out there every time I came. And it became clear to me that he knew I was coming and he was looking out for me. In another instance, the son of a woman I was visiting would be at the window, and I would never have seen him, but I was crossing the street in a car full of young Black men. stopped and they were talking to me, and he called down, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm fine. These are people I work with." So I always had someone looking out for me, just as you had on that street.
Carolyn and Ellie, can you hear me?
I have a question. Oh, that was deeply moving. Thank you very much. And there was one photograph that was black and white that came right after one that was in color. And you mentioned something about the fact that it was in black and white. I think it was the one that had the sign saying no openings or something. And I wondered, did you must have had a camera with black and white film in it. Did you made a conscious decision? Well, I'm going to shoot this one in black and white. I think there was one other one. How did you decide what kind of film?
Well, no longer do I use film. It was a digital camera, and I photograph, and both of us photograph everything in color. But what you can do through a digital format is to change things in the way you see it. And what I saw there was black and white. And so it happens to be very easy to change it. And I think the photograph stands out so much more in black and white because that gentleman was extraordinarily unhappy. The sign was there, and I felt black and white was stronger. Some people can do photograph in black and white through the digital camera. We do it all in color and then change it to black and white depending upon the feeling that we want to get out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gloria?
Unmute.
Gloria, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. How long did the whole project take you from beginning to end?
If I remember correctly, we were aiming for an October show, which was at the Cheltenham Arts Center. And we were, the head of the center had thought it was a great idea and we should work on this. And then all of a sudden she called Ellie and she said, "We have an October opening, can you do it?" I think we did it in no more than 4 or 5 months.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah, because
The variety of shots that you got is really extraordinary.
yeah.
And yeah, it's a great exhibit. I'm sure you both should be very proud of it.
Thank you. Dolores?
I really enjoyed this presentation. It was beautiful. The photographs are just, they're wonderful. So I want to thank you for that. And then I'd like to know if you had any professional training to take photographs, or is it just something that you picked up along the way?
Ellie has the professional training. And you go first.
Well, neither of us have professional training. We both were. I was in education, Carolyn was in education and in the adoption center. And I was always sort of interested in photography. And when I retired from a very, 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 very busy job as a principal, I said, I need to get something to to really get involved in. And I said, I'm always interested in photography. So I started to take some workshops. I took a digital class, Photoshop class at community college, then took some workshops, and then we took a couple of workshops together. But in terms of anything professional, we did not.
Elle, I'm sorry, Elle, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you need to talk about your father, and you need to talk about your work when you were your work in Mount Airy with kids.
Well, what happened? That's my husband. Sure.
Hi, Mickey.
And there's Nancy, Elliot. So my father was a motion picture projectionist in Brooklyn, New York. And I, as a kid, used to go up into the booth, and there were these big, huge projectors, 2 huge projectors in the projection room. And I used to stand by the projectors, and I would press it for the new, press one for the one projector worked, and then the next one, and the next one, and then you had to press it to start the second one after the first one was finished. And then it was a small room, and there was just film there, and I used to cut the film and splice it and put it together. I don't know if my brother is still on this. He was on and he had something else. There he is. There he is. I don't know if he remembers the same thing, but did you play with the film there?
Of course, we spliced the film. I even have the splicer at home.
That's right. We spliced the film. So how much that affected my photography, I do not know. I like to think it did. And then the other thing is that when my children were young, and Carolyn's children were young, Nikki's children were young, because I took pictures. I was taking pictures of my friend's children, and she said those were really nice. Maybe you'd like to take pictures of a whole lot of kids. And so what I did was just start taking pictures of my friend's children. I went and took a course in film photography at community college, and I took pictures for a couple of years before I went back to work. So that's the only, so my brother and I like to think that there was an effect from my father.
And primarily, Ellie just dragged me to the Cheltenham Camera Club, and I learned a great deal. I did workshops and so on, and but Ellie's really my best teacher.
Thank you.
Ellie, this is Dennis. We are proud owners of wonderful photographs you took in black and white of our daughter when she was the same age as your kids. And anyway, I just wanted to say that there's so many people in Mt Airy who have benefited from that period. When you began your intro, I mean, about 8 miles long, and you had never before really so carefully traveled those 8 miles. It just reminds me, well, two things. So many people in Philadelphia and in similar situations in other cities never really get to the other neighborhoods. It's pretty rare. Our cities are very segregated, yep, racially and economically, and the way work has developed. People don't gather together to all go to the big factory, crossing neighborhoods, all of that. And so your project really reminds us when we see the photos about these diverse neighborhoods. And in some ways, your story encourages us to reach out more and to learn more. And so I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Dennis, if I can add, I think it humanizes the neighborhoods. Yeah. It makes them less threatening. It makes them much more real. Makes you see them, the people who live there, as individuals, all striving for, to be human and to be together and to make a better life for themselves. So I think that's the strength of that too.
I was interested in the map.
Yes.
You, having lived in West Philadelphia for 45 years, I don't quite understand. You mentioned Germantown Avenue going through West Philly a couple times.
No.
And I couldn't figure out where it could have done
it
that.
was North Philly that we said. It went from Chestnut Hill, Mt Airy, Germantown, Nicetown, Tioga, North Philadelphia, and Northern Liberties.
There you have West Philadelphia.
No, we didn't.
They said West Mt Airy and East Mt Airy.
That's what it was.
Not West Philadelphia.
That's what it was, probably, yeah.
Yeah. They said West Mt Airy and East Mt Airy.
Okay.
Did you take the pictures from one end to the other in order?
Oh, good.
Or did you dip into the?
Pretty much.
We went back to some places, didn't we?
Yeah, we looked at where we had photographed and where there were holes, and but it was funny. We stopped at the Nicetown post office one day because we couldn't figure out the neighborhoods, and asked people who were standing in line where Nicetown was and where Tioga was. We got so many different answers. It was really funny.
That's interesting. I think Lynn had a question. Lynn?
Yeah, I was going to say that, first of all, Ellie took a fantastic picture of my son and his family. was one of the lucky ones. But also, you know, you're talking about humanizing the neighborhoods. I remember, Ellie, when you started to do this, and I think that it's your personalities that two white women could walk through the neighborhood like that. I think partly it was you. I mean, both of you, Sir Carolyn, that you saw them. I mean, it was the humanity that you brought to it
That's the point.
was conveyed to them.
That's right.
It wasn't just that you were two white older women that were, you know, dangerous. I think you contributed something that allowed them to do it. You brought it out.
They could sense it. People could feel it.
And that's great. I mean, I think that is wonderful.
That's it.
Our positive regard for people. I mean, we didn't.
Could you get a little closer to the microphone? Sometimes it's hard to hear sometimes.
Yeah, it's not like we humanized anybody. People were, you know, I just want to be sure that people were there and we met them.
I think Lynn and then Bill Tremetier. And Lynn, I think, but Lynn, you have to unmute yourself.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
No.
Okay, I said what you know.
Oh, there's Yoshiko.
Okay. I just moved here from California 6 weeks ago. And I feel very fortunate to have been introduced to Philadelphia in such a lovely way. And I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Bill Tremetier?
Bill and Love and I were just remarking that both of you have an orientation out of your personal interest toward people, and you have a real sensitivity to personalities and people's conditions. And we were commenting to each other that knowing Carolyn very well for the last, we'll keep that secret, how many years?
50.
We were both kids at the time. And that Carolyn has a couple of distinctive artistic parts of her persona that have been mentioned. One is she's always been quite capable of using color, and the other is in composition. We always remarked about her composition of design around her home, her gathering of items and so forth into little vignettes. But Bill, did you want to? No. So we were just saying that there are those skills that both of you have that may not have been labeled as professional or trained, but they're innate to your personalities, and you capture things that bring out part of your souls.
I want to say it's interesting that we both have been interested in street photography, but we see things in different ways. One of the things that someone took a picture of the two of us photographing. I will go out, let's say we're going out to photograph the same thing. And then we come back and I have this broad picture of what's going on. And Carolyn has been down on the ground looking at this little thing that she takes, this small piece. And we will come back from the same experience sometimes with two very, very, very different things. And one other thing I want to say, that I may have pulled Carolyn into photography, but she has taught me so much about design and about color.
That's the thing.
The way you look at things that I did not see before. So our kids were in nursery school together, and we've taught each other a lot through the years, through the friendships through the years.
Your comment about Carolyn's perspective reminds me that some years ago, well, we lived down in Beaufort, South Carolina, and Carolyn was here for a visit and also participating in a photographic workshop in Savannah. And one day I took her over to St. Helena Island, which was a very historic place. And she got out and was taking some pictures, and I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was this image of Carolyn in my rearview mirror with her squatting down in the middle of the road and taking a ground level picture of the field.
Yeah, got to get close. Now, we cannot see everybody's faces on the screen. So Dave Bell.
Dave
Yeah.
Bell. Yeah, I can see Carolyn's kitchen from my
Hi, David.
from my room that I'm sitting in now.
I've been
I think it was a wonderful project that you undertook. Given the fact that Philadelphia ranks as #1 in poverty, can you both talk about what you learned from your travels through the community in relation to, I guess, generally how people survive?
Well, I don't know that I really can, Dave. I think that we had to keep our feelings in some aspects far back, or it would have made us very sad, like the little girls with their mom. You know, it was nice they got a treat, but I mean, their surroundings were not what we would want for children. We just tried to approach each person and get to know them. We didn't try to do a sociological study in any way. Yeah, there's some the poverty in Philadelphia is very, very sad. You know, in many ways, though, you don't see it. We didn't see that much of it on our walk down Germantown Avenue. It's hidden.
Well, one of the things that I think that I saw, David, is that I remember there's certain buildings look like they've been really in very bad shape. They're dilapidated or they're torn apart. And so in certain areas, I would see that. So that's sort of what's coming to mind now. All of what I think about as I go back to 2012 and 2013 is the experiences that we had with the people. That's what just stands out so much. And as we've redone this now, you know, how many 10 years later, it's striking how much it's affected us both personally in terms of how we connected with these people. And that's what seems to stand out.
When do you plan to do Chestnut Hill to Collegeville?
Is that the way it goes the other way?
That's Germantown Pike.
Yes, Germantown Pike. Is there anybody else we can't see you?
Yeah, I'm going from page to page now.
Hi, can I speak? Melvin Chappelle.
Hi, Melvin. Wait a second. Let me get
Hi.
you. Oh, so good to see you.
Yes.
But I can't see
Melvin
you right now.
is
Melvin,
a great photographer.
and
there.
No. Well, anyway, start to talk and we'll find you.
Hi, you gave a great presentation, the both of you did, and I love the photographs and how you were able to relate the people to the images that you were showing, and how you were able to express your interest in the people you were photographing. And I thought you guys did a great job with that. And I don't have to tell you because you had so many other people before me telling you how they felt about that. And I just wanted to say to everybody that I also had, as a photographer, did a solo exhibit of Germantown Avenue that was done and sponsored with the Germantown Historical Society. And that was done in 2014, 1 year after Ellie and Carolyn did their show. And I didn't even know that we were both working on the same project at the same time and but we were doing different things, because my images were basically focused on the historical content of what's located on Germantown Avenue. Because, like, for example, the revolutionary battle during the Civil War took place on Germantown Avenue. That gets reenacted on October 4th every year along Germantown Avenue. Then you have the Underground Railroad, the Johnson House, not related to Carolyn, I don't think, which was a place where Harriet Tubman could have possibly have spent the night at. And so she definitely have walked the streets of Germantown Avenue. And then you have important places like the Morris Arboretum, which is the official arboretum of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the Woodmere Art Museum. All of these great places that are on the avenue, and they show a really great part of the historical content of this of Germantown Avenue, and it has several historical houses as well. I could continue to name others, and I also wanted to point out that it was on Germantown Avenue and a house of Quakers, and sometime in the 1600s that the first petition against slavery was written and spoken out loud. And so it has a tremendous amount of history. And I think, though, that what Ellie and Carolyn was able to do is bring out some of that contemporary history for us all.
Yeah, just a quickie. Melvin and I talked about this. I remember that we had the two different focuses on Germantown Avenue, and I remember now you're bringing that back, Melvin. I remember seeing your exhibit and just talking about the difference, and it's just bringing that back to my memory now. So thank you.
Are you planning to do any additional projects like this?
We've had a couple of exhibits together. We had one called Two Friends, Two Perspectives. We certainly haven't done anything recently. So I don't know that we
Nothing is in the works.
Nothing
so
is
far.
in the works at this point.
Oh, you should, because your work is terrific.
Thank you.
By the way, I have switched to almost totally digital cell phone photography now, and have
Really?
taken a number of courses. Actually, with one of the Philadelphia Inquirer former photographers, I saw Charlotte Sutton was on here, who's the managing editor, I believe, of the Inquirer. But this photographer retired and does amazing work with only his cell phone. So I've sort of been working with him and learning editing in the cell phone also. And you can't tell in most cases.
Unless you're blowing it up.
Right. Anybody else? Well, thank everybody for coming.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just yesterday, Eileen sent an email saying we could invite family and friends, and I'm delighted that so many of Ellie's and my family and friends showed up from as far as South Carolina, Michigan,
Woodstock,
Long Island, Woodstock. Yeah. So this was fun.